Welcome to the P2P FCFA conference for LIPS and RIF. And as many of you know, I'm Victoria Esses. I'm co-chair of Pathways to Prosperity.
Bonjour tout le monde. Bon matin.
Good morning to you all. Kimberly Jean Farrand here, Director of Francophone Immigration at the Réseau de Fédération FCSA.
We've worked together for a while. This is actually the first time that P2P and FCFA are officially partnering and planning this event. And we're very confident that this will set a model for the future of us working together to hold this annual conference and engage in many other joint activities.
It is a true pleasure to see so many representatives from LIPs and RIFs, including the new representatives who are with us for the very first time. We know definitely that in this event you will find a very welcoming group that will be opening their arms to you. So over the themes for the past 2 days, this will be on inclusive collaboration for collective impact. This therefore includes the plenary session where we will talk about inclusive collaboration amongst sectors. And when collaboration is not easy, well, we will be able to take advantage of this event, and we will see studies that will present to us the different challenges in LIPs and RIFs. We will see how the day unfolds, and if everything goes well with some changes maybe, we will be able to do this regularly in our programming, in the LIP and RIF programming.
We have returned to producing this booklet of the accomplishments of the LIPS and RIF. And it's really thanks to all of you for submitting for this, and this will continue to be a regular part of our conference. And what we love about it is being able to see all the successes together and having an opportunity for hopefully everybody to learn from each other's successes.
Some practical logistics. Please make sure that your phones are off. We will have to use the Slido application, so just make sure that they're not on sound. If you need to charge your phones, we do have chargers available. There's a meditation and prayer room that you can have access to at the same place that it's been for the past few days. It is the constable room on the fourth floor. Simultaneous interpretation is available for those who would like it, so please grab a headset if you don't already have one. Simultaneous interpretation will be available when we are in the plenary session in this room. And we therefore encourage you to use the service so that you can fully participate in our discussions and in our exchanges.
Thank you. Before we get started, we'd like to acknowledge that we're meeting on the unceded and ancestral territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations, which has been stewarded by them since time immemorial. The term unceded acknowledges the dispossession of the land and the inherent rights that Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh hold to the territory. Further, we respect and affirm the inherent and treaty rights of all Indigenous peoples across the land. We have and we will continue to honor the commitments to self-determination and sovereignty we have made to Indigenous nations and peoples. We acknowledge the historical oppression of lands, cultures, and the original peoples in what we now know as Canada, and we fervently believe that we should contribute to the healing and decolonizing journey we all share together. So
the moment that you've been waiting for, our first panel will now begin. I would like to invite Florentine Florent, Amélie Olivier, and all the members of the panel please come to the stage for our first panel of the day. Thank you so much for your attention.
Welcome, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be here and to be able to introduce to you Diana Ospina from the Surrey Local Immigration Partnership, Jean-Jacques Samoué from the Communauté Congolaise de Hamilton, Tara Bédard from the Waterloo Region Immigration Partnership, and Emmanuel Nahimana from the Réseau Immigration Francophone de la Nouvelle-Écosse. I will give all their bios that are of these wonderful people are on Feedloop, so please check them out. It's really worth it. But I'm now going to give the word to Medou Tonwan, my co-chair of this session, to introduce the topic.
Hello. Well, thank you very much for your attention. My name is Mediwa Olivier Dédé. The objective of this is inclusive collaboration when collaboration is not easy. So just to give you the context, LIPs and RIF are about access to services. But how to promote collaboration when it is not easy? In this plenary session, we will talk about different strategies that they use in order to establish, maintain collaboration with partnerships, and looking at the challenges that they have encountered and the way in which they have been able to overcome them. We will talk about the different best practices in collaboration that have worked for them and the key characteristics that have enabled for this collaboration to be a success. The objective, therefore, is to share and to learn from one another so that we can together promote welcoming communities that support the welcoming and settlement of newcomers in Canada. Without further ado, I'd like to give the floor over to Diana Ospina for her first presentation, and she'll talk to us about collaboration with Indigenous peoples. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Florentine and Medou Tonwan, for setting the stage for our session this morning. It is truly an honor to be here alongside my fellow panelists, Tara, Emmanuel, and Jean-Jacques. Today, I'll be sharing the experiences of the Surrey Local Immigration Partnership and our journey in engaging and building relationships with diverse Indigenous communities in Surrey, British Columbia. Looking out at this room, I know that I'm amongst individuals and organizations that are deeply committed to building and strengthening these relationships in ways that are unique to your own areas and contexts. And so today I hope to offer just one more perspective that we can learn from together. So Surrey is located about 35 kilometers southeast of Vancouver, with the Fraser River as its northern border and partially bordered by the Pacific Ocean on the west. It is located on the unceded and stolen lands of the Semiahmoo, the Katzie, the Kwantlen, the Kakite, the Musqueam, and Tsawwassen First Nations. I acknowledge that these communities have lived on and cared for the land and waters here since time immemorial. As a first-generation settler, I may never fully understand the profound and fundamental relationships and responsibilities these nations have to the land and waters. However, I know that this connection is a source of healing for the people and the land, and that denial of their rights continues to cause harm. I have much to learn about how to move towards reconciliation, and I'm currently taking the Land Back course offered by the Yellowhead Institute and learning more about the petition of the Katzie, Kwantlen, and Semiahmoo to return Kwekanek, Campbell Heights North in Surrey, back to the nations. So in a full room of lips, rips, and zips, I don't think I need to go too much detail about what the LIP is. Just very quickly, I'll let you know that we share that goal of engaging a wide range of partners to support our municipality in welcoming newcomers, in settling and integrating successfully. And we have over 35 council members who guide our efforts on activities like needs assessments, mapping community assets, sharing resources and information, identifying gaps through collaborative discussions and community-based research. Surrey is one of the largest growing communities in British Columbia with a population of over 562,000 people, and 45% of our community is made up by immigrants. Surrey is also home to the largest urban Indigenous population in the province with over 16,300 people. As the late Honorable Murray Sinclair said, reconciliation is about forging and maintaining respectful relationships. There are no shortcuts. And the Surrey LIP recognizes that reconciliation is key to building inclusive communities where Indigenous perspectives are included in how we welcome newcomers to Surrey and connect with communities. We have focused on the truth part of truth and reconciliation by working closely with local Indigenous communities on several projects. Just briefly, these include an initiative bridging Indigenous and refugee youth in 2018 in partnership with the Fraser Region Aboriginal Friendship Centre, or FRAFCA, which culminated in a retreat on the Kwantlen First Nation Longhouse, fostering understanding, solidarity, and shared experiences. In 2021, we completed the co-development of the Surrey First Peoples Guide for Newcomers, which was developed through a community-centered approach involving extensive research, roundtable discussions between newcomers and Indigenous communities, and collaboration with Indigenous knowledge keepers and elders. The guide revealed some hard truths and built foundations for shared understanding. In 2022-2023, the Surrey First Peoples Guide for Newcomers became the foundation for learning and unlearning sessions for key staff from our agencies belonging to the LIP Council, as well as the wider community. These sessions were co-led by Indigenous and immigrant facilitators and aimed to deepen understanding of the colonial history of Canada and promote decolonization. These projects were a result of generous collaboration with Indigenous peoples. The relationships were guided by the Letsamot, or one heart, one mind approach, and ethical engagement principles. As our North Star, these principles guided us through staff turnovers, many missteps, funding delays, as we forded the river to find shared purpose. Through Letsamot, we can reflect on our mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional readiness to ensure we proceed with cultural humility and work towards culturally safe spaces. Under mental, we acknowledge and respect Indigenous knowledge systems such as stewardship of the land, their histories, medicines, and lived experiences of oppression, as well as cultural revitalization. We seek out and listen to the voices of elders, chiefs, truth holders, and representatives, as well as the youth. Under physical, we find out what are the actions that build good relationships. These could include creating an art space for Indigenous and newcomer youth to connect, engaging Indigenous vendors, providing cultural safety training where staff can confront anti-Indigenous attitudes. Under spiritual, through indigenization, we can make space for Indigenous worldviews and weave multiple worldviews together to become stronger. This could include shared events for storytelling, food, music, and dance. And finally, emotional. We want to find out what are the values and protocols that could bolster our spaces for dialogue, and through consultations with the Indigenous communities, put those into place. Okay. On this slide, I just wanted to quickly show you the 5 priorities of our recently developed community strategy for welcoming newcomers, and our council's belief that reconciliation is not just avoiding wrong or doing right, but having a living, breathing relationship with Indigenous peoples. I wanted to demonstrate through a priority 4 there that we have complete support in putting the resources needed to continue building these relationships with respect and reciprocity. So, as I said before, I know many of you are engaging in this work, and I think some of these barriers that I'm going to identify are shared amongst all of us in the room. And they're very justifiable barriers when engaging with the Indigenous community. These include systemic funding inequities that limit the capacity of Indigenous communities to respond to requests from non-Indigenous organizations. Recognizing that community priorities are always going to be focused on the needs of the members. And there are many needs, including housing, access to education and health services, supporting cultural revitalization, and addressing intergenerational traumas and harms caused by a colonial system. Also, we recognize that building trust takes time and great care. Because there is a long history of colonization, systemic racism, extractive practices, and broken promises by governments, institutions, and settlers. And also, we need to make sure that we find the right people to talk to within the community to help us build these relationships. I think another thing we've noticed is the fear of doing harm can lead to a sense of inaction. And finally, one that we're all very familiar with, staff turnover, both within the local immigration partnership and the Indigenous organizations can set back the relationships, which are often very interpersonal relationships. To overcome some of these barriers, it has been helpful for us to adhere to these principles. So the first one is motivations. We want to investigate the personal and organizational motivation to engage with Indigenous peoples. Then we have learning and unlearning. We tackle the false narratives of our colonial education about Indigenous history, cultures, and traditions, and grow knowledge. We grow in the knowledge of the historical legacies of intergenerational effects of the Indian Act in residential schools. We also actively listen. We need to listen with an open heart and mind to elders, traditional knowledge keepers, warriors, to understand and do better, and go to events and be with the community whenever possible. With a trauma-informed approach, we want to create consenting and safe spaces for dialogues and sharing of lived experience, which supports Indigenous, newcomer, and refugee partners. And with reciprocity, we want to build right relationships by thinking about how our engagement can benefit the Indigenous community. And we want to see if there's a collective interest that can lead to cooperation and understanding with transparency and accountability. And it's also very important to show respect and love by following protocols and fairly compensating community members. And finally, we want to find common ground so we can walk together towards a shared purpose. So with these guides in place, I'm going to walk through how the ethical engagement principles guided our work in one of our latest projects called Stories from the Land. So Stories from the Land is an annual event. It's an opportunity for newcomers and the local Indigenous community to come together to share a meal, witness protocols, and deepening their understanding of local First Nation history and culture through the power of storytelling. So I'm going to go through all of the different aspects of our ethical engagement guide. So number one, motivations. We recognize the importance of reconciliation in building truly inclusive and strong communities, and believe that we best serve this purpose by sharing truths. We use the Letsamot reflections to make sure that we're able to guide our purpose. Under learning and unlearning, our team deepened our understanding of the impacts of residential schools by attending workshops, webinars, and engaging in communities of practice. Under actively listening, we met with the local First Nation during the planning stages of the event to learn about the stories that they wanted to share and to see how they wanted to be involved and centered in the event. Number four, the trauma-informed approach. We followed the directions from the Indigenous knowledge keepers that worked with us, all about following West Coast protocols to the absolute letter, and so that we could make sure we were doing the welcoming, sharing a meal before doing the work, blanketing, calling witnesses, and gift giving, and understanding how we can support the role of the cultural safety workers that were also invited to our event. Under reciprocity to build right relations, we collaborated with the Friendship Center to co-develop the event and apply for the grant, ensuring that the budget fairly compensated Indigenous partners, consultants, and vendors. As a LIP Secretariat, we used our resources to handle all the administrative and logistical tasks to take that burden off of the partnership. And finally, finding common ground. And these are not like in order of operations, like that's just how the guide is, but we talked about all of this as well. We had the great opportunity to have family-to-family discussions. We learned that the community had many teachings about love and that the local First Nation Band Council gave its blessing for sharing that love through the sharing of stories to help to build the bridge of understanding and solidarity and start to heal from the effects of colonization, which they truly believed were effects that we all felt, not just the Indigenous community. All in all, it was a very successful event, and we've learned every time we've done it. So I think these guides have really helped us in framing our event so that everyone felt supported and heard and listened to. I mentioned before that the team is constantly learning, and I'm just going to give a quick shout out to the National Newcomer Collective for Truth and Reconciliation, which is a growing community of practice and a resource hub for learning and unlearning, and we have regular meetings as well. I encourage you to take a look and consider joining the collective to learn from fellow colleagues in the settlement sector, and you can see the website there. It's just a brand new project. It's growing every day, but I know if you join us, you can enrich the resource collection as well. Oh gosh, I'll just close on this wonderful image of the community members taking part in National Day for Truth and Reconciliation event held by the Semiahmoo First Nation in White Rock. I think this is a beautiful image which asks us all to reflect on what reconciliation means to you and how that motivates your desire to engage with Indigenous communities in your regions. So my time is up, I'm sorry. So I'm just going to say Hapsipka. Thank you so much for your attention, and if you have any other questions, I invite you to connect. Thank you very much, and again, sorry for taking too much time.
Merci beaucoup, Diana, pour
Thank you very much, Diana, for this presentation. You went over a few minutes, but it was very interesting and worth it. So I invite other panelists to try to stay on time so that we may finish on time, so we can leave some time for questions as well. And I would like to now invite Jean-Jacques from Toronto, and he represents an ethno-cultural society that developed an initiative for CFA. Jean-Jacques, you have the floor.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Jean-Jacques.
Hello, my name is Jean-Jacques Somwe. I am Congolese from the DRC, and I come from the Congolese community from Hamilton. I will speak French because I think it is the most romantic and beautiful language in the world, but I also will try to speak a little bit of English since I am bilingual. So today we'll be talking about a collaboration with the Francophone settlement community of Hamilton in the DRC. This collaboration has created many positive elements that you will be discovering throughout my presentation. So I'd like to talk about holistic integration for newcomers. The community, I wanted to give you a little bit of context first. What is the ethno-cultural community of Hamilton? And how is that defined? So the Congolese community started in 2001, and it was because of a malaria case that was misdiagnosed by a Canadian medical personnel that thought it was Ebola. So when you cough a little bit, everybody thought that's Ebola right away. But it was not, it was malaria. But the medical community was able to discuss with its Canadian colleague to say, this is not Ebola, this is actually malaria. So that was a sign of cohesion and resourcing. And this allowed our community to start working together, to gather and cohesion started that there. Solidarity started. It was at first a very small community, but it grew. Today, it's one of the biggest community in the GTA, in Toronto. So for me, let's define what is an ethnocultural community. That is a group of people, of individuals that come from the same nation, the same country. They share that. And that is an ethnocultural communities. They also face similar challenges. It could be tribalism. It could be internal conflicts. When you talk about a Rwandan, someone from Burkina Faso, someone from the DRC, the Congo, you think they are all the same. But no. So there is a bit of tribalism there. And therefore, being cohesive within your ethnocultural community is very important. There are also advantages. Earlier, I talked about the doctor that was able to diagnose malaria that previously was thought to be Ebola. These resources are resources from our ethnocultural community and that we can share with other communities. And it's also a form of therapy. And sometimes you have no one to turn to, and you can call someone, one of your compatriots, and speak to them. And that is healing. So our mandate is quite simple. We want to strengthen the bonds of solidarity between members. We want community cohesion. We want to promote the social, economic, and cultural well-being of its members. We seek to facilitate the harmonious integration of our newly arrived members, especially newcomers, into Canadian society. We want to strengthen the bonds of belonging. We also want to promote our bilingual identity, English and French, which is a major asset within the community. So to reach our mandate, our community was able to establish something quite unique, which is an intervention framework. And this framework, I don't know if some of you are in public health. We have copied some of the model. We inspired from the model of public health. And we worked in collaboration with other institutions that have similar mandates. So here's the model. And then we're able to identify the protective factors as well as the risk factors. And then from there, we're able to develop our equation. We also organize workshops, training, and we also have community meetings in order to progress our project. So what's very important here is that this collaboration, everything we've identified as a risk, as a protective factor and as a risk factor. Okay, so protective factors are great, but what is at risk is exactly that, the risk factors. And so for the risk factors, we developed a collaboration between the Congolese Hamilton community and the settlement Francophone community. So I'll show you a few projects. So we have here a funding that was given. And there's also coaching, mentorship given to the Congolese community so that we can implement these projects. There's also support to this ethnocultural community in order to reach our mandate. So here I'm going to give you a bit more details. I'd like to speak of 3 activities, major activities that changed the situation in the Congolese community. First, there's Confinart. Imagine during COVID, we were all confined, right? So we had the idea of create a project called Confinart. So when you are quarantined, when you are isolated, art can flourish. So in order to bring cohesion, to encourage dialogue between people, to not be isolated, we created this project. People could do their art online and collaborate, discuss amongst each other, exchange their artworks. And here is a picture of myself. I had never painted. This was my first time. And people liked it. And I sold it for $200. Can you believe it? So we had an exhibition even. with the help of the settlement community, the welcoming community, Francophone, we were able to organize an exhibition at the Sheraton Hamilton. And there was an auction. We had no resources, so we got funding to do that. There were many art lovers who participated in this exhibition, and so there was an auction. So thank you as well. Here, one of my colleagues, it's thanks to her that I'm able to do art. So thank you. The second activity, which was also major, absolutely major, is a youth talent show. So I talked about risk factors. We understand that if the young person is not well mentored, there will be issues in the community later on. So we wanted to create something so that we can highlight what youth have and that they can share with community members. We also wanted to give them a platform to stop isolation. And that's when we had the Youth Talent Show. There were 14, 15 young people. They were able to showcase their talent in front of the whole community. I'd like to pause here. You can see that young people are the future. So if we're not able to put their interests at the heart of our concerns, then we will have big issues in the future. Our partner understood that, and I'm announcing you here that we'll have a second edition of this, the second edition of the talent show for young people, in order to highlight youth's importance in the future of our community. This is very important. So I'm going to end with a third activity, which is French in our homes. So we noticed, unfortunately, that in our communities, newcomers, they used to speak French well, but then suddenly they decide, never mind, I'm going to learn English. English is permanently competing with French. If you're not able as a Francophone to take care of your brothers and sisters, then they will leave. They will choose another language. That's what we notice. There are parents who sent their kids to French schools so that they can improve their French and maintain their French. And we were able to lead this project with our partners. We developed a project how to motivate our newcomers, their parents, the kids, to stay and to continue living in French. And it's not just for them, it's also for us, because if their children are bilingual, then they can access many more opportunities, including work opportunities, and that's a key asset. So it's a good return on investment. We were able to share tips on how to encourage people to continue living and speaking French.
Là qu'on a pu partager ensemble avec le 7 speakers, panélistes.
That was the day that we spent together with the panelists. We talked about ideas, how to improve French in our communities. So I'd like to finish with a thought. You can see what's on the screen, right? People are saying yes, people are saying no. But I've got a question for you. If you answer no, well, it may very well be a no. So we may be lucky that we were able to work with a welcoming Francophone community. We are blessed. And I just shared with you certain activities that we conducted. But there are many ethno-cultural communities who don't have this opportunity. So because maybe they don't have enough funding, maybe they don't have a structure, and they're left on their own. So what's the issue here? In the journey of this newcomer, it always begins in the ethno-cultural culture. That is their point of entry. That's not the only one, but it is one essential point of entry. Just imagine someone is coming and they don't, no one answers their call. And what if they are killed that night? So institutions won't be able to support them because the person may not survive. So it is essential for there to be collaboration. So there are two things that I'd like to conclude with. For there to be a collaboration, I'm talking about all of the ethnocultural community, is that there needs to be these four essential points. There needs to be complementarity. We need to understand that we need this completion. And this is all in the context of an emergency. So if there's an emergency, we should be able to get to deal with it. There's authorization, there's jurisdiction, and funding. These 4 points. If we support ethnocultural communities with these things and we have collaboration, well, it'll improve everything. Thank you so much.
Merci beaucoup, Jean-Jacques.
Thank you so much, Jean-Jacques, for your great presentation. This has enabled us to understand a little bit more these results of the results funded by IRCC again, and that includes 10 other communities. So I'd like to invite Tara right now, who's going to present to us about the collaboration initiative linked to economic development and employability. We have 12 minutes for this presentation. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to try to do this in 12 minutes and help keep us on track. So I'm really happy to be here again today, third day in a row, with many of you at the P2P conference. My name is Tara, and I'm here today representing the work that we do in Waterloo Region through our immigration partnership in building collaboration with our business and economic development partners. I don't know who was here yesterday, if everybody was, if you heard the colleague from the Medicine Hat Economic Development team. I thought he was amazing, and he spoke to many of the things that I think are true about the way that we try to approach our work with our business community in Waterloo Region. Some of the things that he said really stood out for me, about work to understand what's behind the different doors, who is there, what matters to them, how they work, and building fences to accommodate for differences. And I think that those are things that are very true in the work that we try to do in Waterloo Region. Okay, so just a little bit about us. Collaboration with economic organizations has been a constant and primary focus of our immigration partnership since our inception and even before. In fact, our LIP was born out of an earlier collaborative initiative in our region called the Waterloo Region Immigrant Employment Network, RYAN for short. RYAN was hosted out of one of our chambers of commerce. It focused on boosting immigrant employment by meeting the needs of employers. It was driven by employers, for employers, and ultimately aimed to help immigrants find their foot in our local economy. So our beginnings are actually rooted in business. And as we expanded to become a full-scale immigration partnership, which included settlement, language learning, community, housing, health, mental health, and other service areas, our municipalities, our post-secondary institutions, ethnocultural groups, and more, our staff and partners have put intentional effort over the last 15+ years of our LIP to maintain that business focus. I'd like to particularly note my colleague, Nora Whittington. Nora, I don't know where you are. Can you put up your hand? Yes. Nora leads our work with our business partners. She is a wealth of knowledge in this area, and she is also here today. We are here today with a couple of our partners from our work steering group. Charlene and Julie, can you put up your hands? They've joined us today to talk about some of the successes that we have had in our collaborations. And if you go to a panel at 11 o'clock that focuses on employment, you're going to hear in more detail some of that work from them. So in our 15+ years as an immigration partnership, we've seen significant change in our collaboration with business and economic development partners, with peaks and valleys, and sometimes those are happening concurrently depending on who that partner is in that space. Today, our mission is to work together to create the conditions for immigrants to succeed and help build a welcoming and dynamic community for everyone. The working together component of that mission is crucial. As LIPS, we collaborate across many sectors and organizations, and each are different. They think differently, they work differently, they are motivated differently, and they focus differently. And that means the work that we do necessarily looks different depending on the sector we are engaging with. And that is okay. We are not all and do not need to all be the same. A little bit about our community. So in Waterloo Region, we are located in Toronto. We are a mid-sized community, which is an hour west of Toronto. We're located on the Haldimand Tract, which takes in 6 miles on either side of the Grand River, which is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Chinantan peoples. Our region includes 7 rural and area municipalities, plus a regional upper-tier municipal government. Thinking about our business and economic development partners, we have 8 regional municipal economic development departments, a regional economic development corporation, 2 chambers of commerce, 3 post-secondary institutions, a workforce planning board, a maze of immigrant-focused and generalized employment service providers, and many employers that we are trying to collaborate with. Many of you are operating in similarly complex ecosystems. Our collaboration with each of these types of partners is unique. Some are stronger than others, and some ebb and flow in terms of strength over time. Since the government began to grow immigration, starting in 2014-2015, that growth has happened across Canada, and we have certainly felt it in our community. In the 2021 census, our immigrant population had grown from just under 22 to over 25% of our population in the last 5 years, and our temporary resident population had exploded. We are one of the fastest growing communities in Canada, largely through immigration, and we have grown at a much faster rate than at many other communities. In that time, we've grown from just around, well, since 2021, we had about 587,000 people, and in 3 short years later, we're up to about 675,000 and growing. Despite our history being rooted in business, started by business, it is not always easy to collaborate with business and economic development partners, but that is not unique to them. Collaboration is hard, and it's hard no matter who it is that you're trying to collaborate with. So we were asked to think about our biggest challenges when it comes to building collaboration with our business and economic development partners. And I think that this is something that I hold true across all of the different types of partners that we are engaging with. And that is helping them to find shared vision, purpose, and understanding. Even if our partners don't all see things or approach them in the same way. Trying to foster a mentality that says what matters to me matters to you, and what matters to you matters to me, without everyone needing to see everything in the same light, because our partners don't all see things in the same way, across sectors, within sectors, and even within the organizations that we're working with. But what we have been successful in doing is landing on a shared purpose, which is about building community together, and in our case, through immigration. This is what brings everyone into our work together across our 3 pillars. Our 3 pillars are settle, work, belong. And it helps to build our collaborations and our partnerships. For our business and economic partners, it means understanding that they are looking through the lens of what our business community needs to thrive. That is talent and the infrastructure that supports talent attraction and retention, like housing and healthcare and many other things. Understanding that talent will largely come through immigration, so now their agenda, the business community agenda around talent and infrastructure, is intimately linked to our agenda through the immigration partnership and touches on many of the other areas that other of our partners are coming into our work because of their primary interest when it comes to newcomer housing, newcomer healthcare, and many other things. We have the same goals. We look at them differently. And the fast pace of immigration growth in our communities has helped us to get the attention, especially of our colleagues in economic development, who were not there so strongly in our early years. Our learning so far. What makes specifically collaborating with business and economic development partners particularly challenging? Not much. Collaboration is hard everywhere. And so we try to apply the same principles when we are collaborating, no matter who that partner is or where they've come from. And a few things that we have tried to focus on over the years is that relationships and collaboration take time to grow, and they change over time. So we focus on short-term and long-term organizations and the individuals because they change. And as the Medicine Hat colleague mentioned yesterday, find the champions. Who has the interest and the energy to help get things done, because it is the action that keeps everybody moving together. Our economic partners, number 2, are primary to our partnership. They are not tangential. They are we center our engagement, their engagement equally among others. One of our 3 pillars, as I said, is business and economic development focused and comprised of partners from those sectors. And several of those members are on our leadership council from business. Our economic partner needs and goals are equally valid together with others, and they are very often aligned with those of our partners from other sectors. But they are all rooted in differing perspectives. We work hard to understand those, try to figure out how to address them within our work, and help build understanding across sectors. They may not address things in the same way as our other partners would want, but they do it in a way that makes sense for them, and our team helps our other partners to make sense of that. Our economic partners must co-lead, and they do, the development of community strategies for supporting immigration. Their understanding and sense of ownership of the work is essential for them to be accountable for all of us delivering on it together. We have helped to build understanding, ownership in relation to the broader community goals that we have set together. They lead engagement in their sector. Through the LIP, we are developing tools and supports that they need in order to be able to do this. They engage their peers in our work when needed. They set direction in employer engagement, education, and support strategies. They co-design tools to support our business community, leverage the immigrant talent in our region, and co-deliver training and capacity building initiatives. Our immigrant employment service partners have really coalesced around a joint identity and co-branded themselves as proponents for immigrant employment, and they have strengthened their work together to engage with business, along with our staff, to support their clients in meeting their employment goals. Recognizing opportunity and taking it brings rewards. Our economic partners are doing amazing things together because we work together. The advocacy agenda of our chambers of commerce reflects the changes we are seeking from an immigration perspective in our community. Their leadership of pandemic efforts in our community in support of the business community brought us in through the immigration partnership, where we were able to really deepen our relationships with economic development, which are bringing really fantastic results. Our work steering group spent several years doing research and engagement, planning and business case development towards a new workplace and immigrant network. Our workforce planning board decided to take on this initiative, which is now growing in our region. It is our regional response to employers telling us they need one place to go for talent. It is funded with seed funding through our Leadership Council, which the Workforce Planning Board was then able to use to leverage IRCC funding for the pilot, and it has had many early successes, and you'll hear about this more at 11 in one of the workshops. They've also been successful in developing a work experience program at our food bank following engagement with construction industry leaders about their talent challenges. Our partners brought groups together, developed a plan. The food bank agreed to join the initiative, put together a budget, which the economic development representatives around our table took back to their teams, and they just secured regional council approval of funding for, so that initiative is about to launch. Main learning is, without our LIP, these initiatives would not have happened, but it is the partners themselves that are doing the work. We are a catalyst as a LIP for action, not the primary vehicle. We can't do everything, and if we do, then others will not. We at Waterloo Region are focused on supporting the community leadership of our partnerships work, when it comes to improving the employment conditions for immigrants, and that means supporting the leadership of our business and economic development partners. So thank you for having us. I took a little bit of extra time, I apologize. We would love to chat with you more about the work that we're doing in Waterloo Region and hear about some of the work that you're doing in this area in your communities later in the day. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Tara, pour cette.
Thank you so much, Tara, for your presentation. The last initiative that we would like to share with you is a collaboration with the provincial government, the Nova Scotia government, more specifically. So Emmanuel Raimana will present to us this collaboration. Hello. I would like to share with you this initiative on collaboration that we have with the Nova Scotia government. I will try to get to answering your questions. For example, why this collaboration? What strategy was used in order for us to conduct this collaboration? And what are the results? Also, what are the success factors? Thanks to this collaboration effort. I know there are Francophone immigration networks here, LIPS as well. Are you all funded by the province or territory? I'm not sure. But what I am certain about is that you are funded by IRCC. And I'd like to say thank you to IRCC. Provinces and territories are observer members. They fund your members. For example, economic development agencies and schools, etc. The RIF coordinates and facilitates this effort with members. So it is always important to collaborate, even if you aren't funded by provinces and territories. So collaboration is therefore essential. Now, why did we come to this collaboration, which is a plus? Well, we really wanted to think outside of the box. We know that RIF facilitates community efforts where there are meetings in provinces and territories, and they participate as well. But we also wanted to go even further. Go further than simply collaboration. And that's what I'd like to talk to you about. It began in 2019, where Nova Scotia invited us to develop together the action plan on Francophone immigration in Nova Scotia. Now, that was very appreciated. It was great that the province was inviting us to collaborate with them to develop this plan. Within this plan, there are many essential points, and it's really about the promotion of the Francophone Acadian community within the country and
We also wanted to encourage the province to promote Francophone immigration in Nova Scotia. So it was on this action plan that we collaborated. And this action plan, in the end, if I remember correctly, was created in 2019 and ended in 2022. And right after, we collaborated on the development of another plan that we call this time, just a second, sorry about that, called the Population Growth Plan for the Francophone population of Nova Scotia. And this plan includes other elements, other collaboration themes.
Alors, quelle est cette collaboration qui est incluse?
So what is this collaboration that goes further? It's a working group that includes the members that you see on the screen right here. So these are the partners. There are the Acadian Federation of Nova Scotia. There's the Economic Council of Nova Scotia. There is St. Anne University, also the Eau Claire's Welcoming Community, Immigration Francophone, as well as the province, which is represented by the Office of Immigration of Nova Scotia, but they also take care of the Acadian and Francophone affairs. Our working group is based on the person. The person is at the center of all of our activities, the immigrant person who we serve. So we have specific objectives and common objectives. We have shared roles and responsibilities in order to coordinate this working group. The province can contribute, as well as other partners and members. We respect the jurisdiction of each member, each partner, the expertise as well of each member. We take decisions in a collegial manner, and communication is frequent within this working group. So you can, for those of you who are familiar with how RIFs work, it's a little bit different. So this relationship is strengthened. Therefore, what were the results? What were the outcomes of this collaboration? We achieved tangible results. So we had this plan for Francophone growth. So we're always updating each other. How are you going to implement this plan, for example? How are you going to promote and internationally? And then the province will invite us to an event that we call Destination Acadia in order to promote and attract French-speaking immigrants in Nova Scotia. We appreciated this type of collaboration that allows us to go further. The second tangible outcome of this collaboration via the working group still. So this is quite innovative. We would work with the local community. Here, I'd like to specifically talk about a pilot project of the Eau Claire municipality. This project aims to support entrepreneurs, business owners, employers who are looking for qualified workforce. And as you know, in smaller communities, there's always a shortage. So this is quite innovative, that the province is seeking to increase the number of immigrants and in order to support communities and employers in the recruitment effort. What did Eau Claire's welcoming community bring here? Well, they are meeting their employers and telling them, here, we will help you recruit internationally. They also will go to the community on the field and tell them, within your community, there's a housing issue. And they'll tell the community, here, we have an immigrant population that wants to live and work in your community, but they need housing. try to give them lodging, housing. Otherwise, you will lose this qualified workforce. For example, for schools, for early learning, and so on and so forth. So this partnership with Oklao's settlement welcoming community was also supported by other organizations such as Nova Scotia's Economic Development Council, and their role was to meet employers that are already in their network in order to support them in their recruitment efforts. So now I have a question. Why did this working group work so well? Why was it a success? There needs to be a certain will, the will to foster Francophone immigration. The will comes from members of the community, but it's also political will from the provincial government. We also need leadership to succeed. The community needs to show leadership so that they're always putting the immigrant population first, the person first. And how can we improve collaboration with the province in order to increase the numbers? There's also this close relationship between the partners. You need to have a close relationship with your agencies, whether it be your programming agencies, different service providers, or IRCC. Sometimes it's good to just call and get to know the latest updates. This is how you'll develop the relationship over time. You can also call to give an update of your programs and just discuss and maintain that close link. Monday, when I was listening to one of the presentations, I think it was Myriam's presentation, Myriam Ouellet, and her strategy. I wanted to add to this list awareness. Awareness between partners, between government partners is very important. Oh, sorry, not awareness, but rather trust. The interpreter corrects herself. So trust is very important. So I will stop here. I would be remiss if I don't thank the partners of the members of RIF who are here today. So thank you so much for your partnership. Here I'd like to mention the Economic Development Council of Nova Scotia, but also I'd like to thank IRCC. Thank you, IRCC, for this continuous funding since 2006. They have funded the Nova Scotia Francophone Immigration Network, as well as the province of Nova Scotia, via Nova Scotia Immigration and Francophonie Acadian Affairs. Thank you.
Thank you to all our panelists for these wonderful words. We have about 20 minutes left, and I think we made up the time. So we have about 20 minutes left in this session for questions and some reflections. So I will give you a few reflections, but as I'm doing so, please go to Slido and ask your questions there, either in French or in English. There are already some questions, so I'm going to give you some time to look at those and vote on them. And in the meantime, really thank our speakers for all the information they gave about the hard but very rewarding work, establishing collaborations with Indigenous communities, culture organizations, businesses, and government. And I think a couple of threads that we've seen is that it's really important, first of all, to think about our motivations for those collaborations, and then to take the time to build trust, to really think who we are reaching out to, what matters to them, but also who is at the center of this work. make sure that we do this work with respect for the skills and the expertise and the lived experiences of those that we are here to support, and gather around a shared vision across different perspectives. Find your champions, as some of them said, and create clear action plans. And all this work it's really essential to also think about the infrastructure for collaboration. What is the funding? What is the capacity for us to take this on? And finally, I always love to see when we see some of these collaborations work out through art, the importance of stories, and the importance also to put youth at the center. So those are some of the themes that I picked up as really valuable. So I see you have had some time to work with Slido and ask your questions. I will read out all the English questions, and my co-chair, Méditon will read the French. I will actually go sit at my chair there because it's a little easier to read them from there.
Merci pour vos questions.
So the first question asked in English is for Jean-Jacques. What is your advice to support and collaborate with ethnocultural groups who are more organic and not formally structured?
So to this question, I would like to say, I try to define a ethnocultural community. How I see these communities is that they are organic by nature and they're not structured. From my experience, what we were able to do from my community is try to gather, try to organize yourselves. You need not just resources and funding, but also other resources such as time, volunteers. Try to gather people around. For example, if there's holidays upcoming, you can create an event. If people have more time to give, you can offer tutoring as well, like, for example, math classes. So these little steps that you take within the community will organically build. And this is what's going to open up more opportunities as time goes. So in summary, you have to talk about the issues within the community and find practical solutions.
Thank you, Jean-Jacques. The next question is for Diana. Diana, you mentioned missteps, which we have also experienced in this important work. Can you share an example of how you have overcome one to continue building trust after a setback?
Yes, thank you. That's a great question. So I think one of the ones that really come to mind, which was a doozy, was when I approached, I wasn't the right person in the community to talk to about the event and the plans that we had. So basically, how I got past that, how I learned from that was, I had to put on a brave face and take the feedback. I also built a relationship with the community, so they'd seen me around before. I'd gone to lots of community events, so I was a known quantity to some extent, so they knew a little bit about what I was trying to do and what my motivations were in terms of bridging indigenous and newcomer communities. So I think that is what helped a lot. I did redirect my questions to the leadership of the local First Nation, and with that I was then given following the correct protocol, where I was then allowed to proceed to talk to the community after the leadership had gone back to the band council, discussed what I was trying to do, talked a little bit about who I was, and then I was given a little bit of a green light. So I think the answer to that is just really work on the relationships, before you go in with a big ask.
I think it's back on. Thank you, Diana. There's another question for you. When you engage with local Indigenous community, when do you engage with local Indigenous communities? In advance of any event or activities, or just the larger ones?
Every chance I get. I want to be out in the community as often as possible. I go to their events. I stalk their Facebook pages, what's going on, where are they holding events. The First Nations in the Surrey area aren't particularly large, although they are urban reserves. So they have events that might be shadowing some of the larger events that happen in Vancouver. So I seek those out. I talk to people. I say, where are you meeting? I want to be there. I want to support. Roll up my sleeves, help with serving food. And one example is the event to commemorate missing and murdered Indigenous women in the local community. That wasn't highly publicized, but I found where they were meeting, and they very kindly invited me in. So that was something that I always do if I can, and that way I have a relationship, a respectful relationship where I can then go in and say, hey, I've got an idea, are you interested? And then we can start talking about events. So, and I do try to get consultation at anything from, having a welcoming for one of our community forums to like a large Indigenous-centered event like our Stories from the Land event.
Thank you very much. The next question is still for Diana. I'm going to ask it in French. When you say that you're catalyzing the work, but that you're not the implementation vehicle, what then is your role to continue to support the main economic development agencies? How are the objectives still on the right track?
So we're still very much involved with those initiatives that I mentioned briefly about, and again, you're going to get the opportunity to hear more about one of them in particular in the next set of workshops. And it took years to get to the launch of, I'll speak about maybe for now, the Workplace and Immigrant Network. It took years to get to the launch of that through our Workforce Planning Board, but it is very much still a project that is at the heart of what our work steering group does. It is a focus of every agenda when our partners are coming together. Workforce Planning Board comes in, shares updates on the progress of the work, brings questions, seeks advice. Our steering group has moved from being, I guess, the incubator of an idea to an advisor, helping to find solutions to problems as they arise and give ideas for future development. And our team works very closely with the people at the Workforce Planning Board who are now leading that initiative in its development out in the community to support their work. We do events together. We bring in other partners to support the work that they're doing. And other partners engaged in our steering group are helping to connect clients into the work that they are doing, because that is the ultimate aim, to support the clients in their employment goals. So they're still very much rooted in the work of our steering groups, but they have their own leadership and life and identity that we are trying to help support in its evolution, because they're still very new. These initiatives have both launched within the last 2 years, and we're now focused on helping to make sure that they stay firmly rooted and grow in success in our community.
Thank you, Tara. Another question for Diana. Diana, what is your experience or advice for working with multiple Indigenous communities where there is conflict?
That's a great question. And I think it's very much framed in the fact that the structures that we work with, such as band councils, are colonial structures and do not meet the needs of the community. So what we try to do, or I try to do, is to get advice from the community organizations that are in Surrey. So we have FRAFCA, the Friendship Center, and also the Métis Nation of British Columbia on our council. So sometimes I'll just have chats with them to see what's going on. I do recognize that there is some conflict within the First Nations, and we always want to center the First Nations in the work that we do, but I also try to bring in other folks. So for example, the Indigenous liaison that works at the Surrey the public library is also a helpful resource for some of the activities and events that we do. So that gives me an opportunity to broaden my approach with the community. And in terms of conflict, I let the community kind of tell me where is the correct place for me to be as they sort things out. It's, this is not a private thing. This is on their website. It's very public. We know there's conflict there, but we also know that there is a hereditary line that is wanting to work with us, and we've been advised that it's good to work with them, so that's what we do. I don't provide any opinions. I don't get involved. I know that's very much something that the community is dealing with, and I recognize that, again, it's because of that colonial structure.
Thank you, Diana. I think the next question is for Tara. Are businesses formally part of the LIP in Waterloo, or do you liaise with them and bring them in for key events and activities?
All of the above. So we have businesses that are involved in our leadership council and in our steering groups, and people who come from business. And they are involved in the work that we do, setting strategy for our region for supporting immigration and developing direction on the types of activities that we are doing together to support our goals in our community. We bring people from business into a lot of the events and activities that we are doing through our work steering group. To pursue the employer engagement and education goals that we have set out to support the employment of newcomers in our region. And we do a lot of work, and Nora in particular does a lot of work going out and just engaging with businesses and employers in the region to really stay on top of kind of the pulse of the community, what are the needs of business, to bring that back as we're working with our partners to develop, kind of the future directions of our strategies and make sure that we're going in the directions that are still right for our community.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. There is now a question for Emmanuel. What is your advice for working well with provincial governments in a context of change of government? So was yesterday the election in Nova Scotia. The government was not changed, but there's also the federal elections that are coming up. How do you deal with that? Yes, the government has not changed in Nova Scotia, so we will continue with the same collaboration that we had. But overall, I would say that when we work on collaboration, there's always the relationship part that we need to work on. And this is worked via discussions. We work on this relation via meetings and just reaching out. So what I would recommend is to not just think about these more traditional meetings that are in our agreements. We can go much further. For example, there can be informal discussions, checking-ins, and this builds trust. And also to be able to share your concerns, the needs of the community, and if the relationship is there, then trust will happen too. And there's also trust of the various partners. The government and the partners will listen to you. They will understand your concerns and support you. So what I can also say is that we're also there to inspire them. If we don't create these opportunities to share discussions, to share our concerns, to discuss, they won't know what to develop. For example, we need to consider the community's needs while developing these programs. I'd also add We can ask for funding at any point. For example, I'll talk about the target for Nova Scotia. It's been a long time coming that the province should be establishing the target, but this did not work. However, we can still continue this work in other ways and come to a target that is positive for Francophone immigration. I mentioned the pilot project. We're still at the beginning of that work, but the objective is to support the community of Eau Claire and also to work with the local community in order to increase the number of French-speaking immigrant populations. So it's very important to strengthen the relationship, strengthening by both formal and informal forums, and not just for the provinces, but also for IRCC. Just call the agents of the program, even if you have nothing to ask. Try to share some updates from your program, and this will contribute to creating a stronger bond. Thank you.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Last question for this panel will be for all speakers. The question is, how do you maintain momentum in your collaborations when there are staff turnovers? And I think many of us have dealt with those challenges. And so I wonder if we have about 3 minutes left, if each one of you can shortly speak to that. And I'll start in the far end of the table with Jean-Jacques and then move this way and end with Diana.
As I explained earlier, we are not a service provider. We are an ethnocultural community. There are specific activities that we take on. We do coaching. For example, when there's newcomers, if they have issues at the community level, we try to solve it in our way, our cultural way, and we try to find solutions. There can be reference frameworks. We're not paid when we don't have salaried employees. So there needs to be a conversation, a deep conversation on how can we have complementarity, for example. Thank you.
Is how do you maintain momentum in your collaborations when there are staff turnovers?
30 secondes. Je pense que j'aurais...
I think I'll sound like a broken record here. It's a big challenge. Staff turnover is indeed a challenge. It's important to foresee the issue coming. For example, to have a replacement person ready. You can also develop tools to introduce your organization. That's also important because the person that will replace you would benefit from some kind of one-pager, a document that talks about your processes, your procedures of your programs, some kind of manual or guide. And you can also collaborate with provincial governments when there's staff turnover. You need to build in time to train the next person too.
I think I'll focus on turnover within our partner organizations, and that happens a lot. And I think just knowing that the people who are working in the organizations that we're engaging with are going to change over time. Some of the things that we have tried to do is, work with our partners to know in advance, like for the individuals who come into our work on behalf of particular organizations, to work with them in advance of them stepping out of their organizations, have them help us to identify who is the right person to come in behind them to replace them, their organization, in the work that we are doing, and to help create the connection between that person and the people on our team who they'll be working with. And then, kind of work with them to help get them oriented to the work that we're doing, and get to know them, because everybody is different, and just because there's a new person coming in representing a partner that we've had doesn't mean that they're going to be the same as the person who was there before them. So really focusing on the relationships, getting to know each other, what motivates each other, to find, the best ways to work together in the future.
Thank you. Diana.
I think I'm also going to be a bit of a broken record. The important thing would be to make sure that everyone on your team is ready to engage with the Indigenous community. So make sure that there is those learning opportunities, so you know a little bit about the history, that you have taken some cultural safety courses, so you kind of know how you can approach the community in a safe and respectful way. And also, don't let those relationships be sitting with one person, but rather try to bring various members of the team, if you're lucky enough to have a team, to different events, to be present in conversations with elders, so they can see that it's not just one person, but rather a family-to-family approach, which is bringing in your entire team and maybe folks from for LIPS, for example, their backbone agencies as well. And I think that's a good and respectful way to proceed with the inevitable staff turnover.
Thank you, everybody. I think that is our time for today. And thank you to our panelists for your wonderful words and your thoughtful way of collaborating with other organizations and institutions in your regions. I think it's been very, very helpful for all of us. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for being here.